This is the Alt Shift X podcast. I'm here with Glidus, and we are joined by Abigail Thorn. Welcome, Abigail.
Hey, good to be here.
So, Abigail is an actor, a YouTuber, a playwright. She was recently on The Acolyte. She was in Baldur's Gate 3. She's now in House of the Dragon Season 2 as the pirate queen Sharako Lohar.
Yar.
How did you do it, Abigail? What was the journey from YouTube to HBO?
Well, I've been acting since I was tiny. I've been acting since I was about 5 years old. Just amateur stuff. And I guess I sort of got my first serious acting jobs doing Shakespeare and physical theatre stuff when I was a teenager. I think my first paid acting job was a physical theatre dance performance that we did in Newcastle. I'm from the north of England. We did it in a shopping centre in Newcastle. And then I went to professional drama school after I got my philosophy degree. I'd already started my YouTube channel by then. My YouTube fans basically paid my rent while I was in drama school. I went on YouTube one day and I said, hey, every actor has two jobs. If I have to go to drama school and work in a pub, I'm not going to have time for YouTube. So over to you. If you want the show to keep going, here's how you can help out. And they did. So YouTube kind of became at that stage like a part-time job. And then it became a full-time job. And I had these sort of two careers going on after I came out of drama school. I did a fair bit of voiceover work and I did some theatre work out of drama school. My first paid acting job out of drama school was doing voiceover for an accountancy company for an internal video. I was just like, this is how our company was founded, and these are the values that we embody. It was good fun actually. It's a fun challenge, commercial stuff. I did a few commercials here and there, and then I had these two careers. And I remember having this chat with Dave Wiskus, the CEO of Nebula, and saying to him, I feel like I'm going to have to leave YouTube behind in order to pursue acting because people don't take me seriously as an actor because all they see is YouTuber. And I've got this drama school qualification. I can do all this Shakespeare stuff and I've got the skills, but they're not taking me seriously. And he went, well, just keep going with it. Also somewhere along the way, I came out and became a woman. So there was also that, right? I was just like, oh man, my career is screwed. And I thought that was going to be the end of my career, but then I immediately got cast in Ladhood on the BBC, which is a BBC comedy. And then I got cast in Django, which was a Western on Sky and Catelia Netflix. Django was my first big TV job after I came out, and I was a little bit nervous. I was in 6 episodes of that, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was there to learn and do my best. And we ended up having a great time. So anyway, post all of that, I was having this conversation with Dave, and I think in order to go further, I need to stop YouTube. And he said, well, if only there was some way you could kind of combine the two. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And Nebula had this thing at the time they were trialing called Nebula Originals, where creators could make a piece of content just for Nebula. That was usually an extra episode of the show, it'd be an extra Philosophy Tube episode, right? And then I said to Dave, well, what if it was a play? Because I'd auditioned for the Globe, Shakespeare's Globe, and I didn't get it. And I was like, I really want to do some Shakespeare. So what if I just wrote my own play in Shakespearean verse and did it? And so I wrote this play, The Prince, and I took it to some friends of mine who were producers, and they were like, yeah, we love this, but it's pretty ambitious. We're going to need some money. And so I went to Dave. I said, what if we did The Prince as a Nebula original? And we had this meeting, me, Dave, and the producers. And Dave said, how much do you need to make this play kick ass? And George, who was the producer of The Prince, was very, very English, Hugh Grant style. I was like, to kick ass, probably about this much, Dave.
Hadn't considered kicking ass.
Hadn't considered ever kicking ass in my life. George doesn't kick ass. He's a very gentle soul. And he gave Dave this 6-figure number. And Dave just went, anything else? And we were like, no, that'll do, actually, Dave. And so Nebula produced The Prince, and I told my YouTube audience, hey, I've written a play. This is what it's about. If you want to see it, you can either come see it in person or sign up to Nebula, because we're going to record it. And so many people bought tickets and signed up to Nebula that we were making profit on The Prince before we even opened. which was amazing. And then we won a bunch of awards. We won Best New Play, Best Lead Actor, Best Supporting Actor, and we got like a one-off award for outstanding contributions to British theatre, I think, was how, something like that was how it was phrased. And it was a hit, and like it sold out. And my agent at the time came to see it, was like, how have you done this? And I was like, I think I've just put YouTube and acting together. And so off the back of The Prince, I got Star Wars, The Acolyte, and then it was a bit of a slump for a while, and then this audition for House of the Dragon came along. And actually, my agent at the time was showing the casting director The Prince and being like, look, this is the kind of thing she can do. Get her in. She can do this. And then and then I got it. After a lengthy audition process, I got it. So that's been the game the last couple of years, is putting YouTube and acting together. They've been doing YouTube 11 years now. I've been doing acting for 20 years, and just kind of putting them together. And then this is another example of just blending those two worlds, I guess. Sorry, it's a very long story, but that's how it happened.
Yeah, no, it's such a cool journey that you've gone through, and it's so mad that there seems to be this division between like YouTubers in the online world versus the more like traditional Hollywood world. When it's like, when people have the skills and people have an audience, it's like, why is there a division? Why not move from one to another?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is it's weird, and I think this line is blurring more and more. But I'm also very conscious of the fact it contributes to quite a lot of pressure on my shoulders, that I'm conscious of the fact that a lot of YouTubers have tried to make the jump to traditional media before and have not necessarily met with all the success they hoped for. I think something that gives me an advantage is, like, I went to drama school, I trained as a professional actor, I know how the system works. I very much did it the traditional route as well. And like YouTube was like the sort of the extra turbo boost, I guess. But it's not like I just did a couple of viral videos and then wandered into an audition. It's like no, I went to a real British drama school and did the intense British drama school training and all that stuff. So I guess it helped.
Yeah.
Oh, and Baldur's Gate 3 happened as well. I forgot to mention Baldur's Gate 3 also happened.
People want to label you as one thing or the other, right? They want to label you as YouTuber or label you as actor, but it's possible to be more than one, I suppose.
Yeah. I think that's what's really cool about Nebula, is trying to build that bridge. Dave and I have had lots of conversations about this, trying to build a bridge from YouTube to traditional Hollywood, because there's a lot of people on YouTube who have talent as filmmakers, as performers, and who aren't getting a place in the traditional industry, not because they don't lack the skills, but because they lack the experience and the connections and the training. I mean, I've worked with a lot of YouTubers who have quite esoteric ways of doing their own shoots, right? So like Brandon Rogers, for instance, I was in an episode of Class Acts a while ago, which is his great drama series on YouTube. Brandon has his way of shooting things, which is like very esoteric, that's evolved over his years as a creator. That's like quite different from how you would be on a traditional set and how a traditional film or TV series would shoot. So there's loads of people on YouTube like that who have the skills, but just don't necessarily have that connection to the traditional industry. And that's what Nebula is trying to provide, is this kind of this rainbow bridge, this bifrost between these two realms.
Yeah, no, there's definitely power in networking, and I think there's a lot of YouTubers who are doing it alone and missing out on connections and opportunities and skills that they can otherwise get.
Yeah.
But I love the connection between The Prince and House of the Dragon. Because The Prince is this wonderful play that's about breaking out of the restrictions of gender roles and other forms of like social expectation.
Yeah.
Which feels like such a through line to Sharako Lohar, because Sharako is this character who defies gender roles and defies social expectations and takes a great deal of pleasure doing so. I wonder if you could speak on that sort of thematic through line from The Prince to Sharako.
Yeah, sure. So The Prince is a play about, listeners, if you're not familiar, it's a play about characters in a Shakespeare play who start to realize that they're stuck inside a play and break out. So a lot of it is written in original Shakespearean verse. Some of it weaves in and out of Henry IV Part 1 and Hamlet as they sort of crash through the Shakespeare multiverse trying to escape. But most of it is written in original blank verse. And then occasionally characters drop out. So there'll be a lot of there'll be big paragraphs of iambic pentameter, and then someone will go, wait, what the fuck did I just say? Like as this world is starting to crumble around them.
It never gets old in the play. Every time it happens, it's still funny.
And the accents are part of it as well.
Yeah, the way people
just
speak.
the whole cast was so good in that. We had a blast doing it. So I actually started writing The Prince when I was at drama school and when I was still in the closet too. And I revisited it a couple years after and said, "Oh, that's what this is about." Like, okay, I realize now what I was sort of grappling with as I wrote it, and sort of touched it up and created a sort of a version 2, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which was the one that we staged. And so it is, it's kind of like a trans coming out story. It's actually, to be honest, in terms of time spent in the play, more of like a repression story than anything else. My character, Hotspur from Henry IV, Part 1, is pretty much the villain who spends most of the play trying to destroy herself and everyone around her, rather than recognize that she needs to leave this world. So she's somebody who really wants to defy the expectations of her family and her society, but can't bring herself to. And also the reason I wrote that play the way I did was that okay, we're gonna get like straight into the deep stuff here. So
Let's.
Yeah, so I'm a trans woman, and there are a very small number of trans women actors in the acting industry. You could like name them on one hand. It's like Hunter Schafer, India Moore, Yasmin Finney, Hari Neff. I mean, like me, and then I'm like really sort of, running out there. And a lot of them are former runway models. A lot of them are childhood transitioners. And that's really, really cool. All fantastic actors, absolutely no shade, love them to bits. But that's a casting that I'm not in. I didn't transition as a kid. I'm not a former runway model. I got my start doing Shakespeare and sword fighting. Listeners, you can't tell, but I'm 6'1". I also enjoy working out, so I'm like quite muscular, quite big. And I prefer doing the kind of, I want to play like action roles. I want to play characters who get to jump in and do something. I mean, I really enjoyed my time on Django, but I kept saying to the producers, like, I can ride horses, I can shoot, I can fight. Like, let me be in the fight scenes. And they said, no, she's feminine. Jess, my character in Django, her role is to be Django's set in this very like brutal masculine world, and Jess's job is to be the softer, more feminine presence, which is cool. I get it. Like, I still think it could have been cool if I was in the battle at the end, but yeah. But anyway, so I have all these skills, and I wanted to play characters who like jumped in and did something rather than who were just like the sassy best friend, And I actually auditioned for a role. I won't say what it was. And it came down to me, India, and someone else, and India got it. And I was in this sort of pit of despair, because I was like, man, like I can't compete with India Moore and Hunter Schafer at that game. If you want somebody who's that like super snatched former model, like Hunter's got this incredible fucking energy on the screen, like because she's like the way she poses, the way she looks, the way she acts, she's just so fucking good. And I was like, I can't do that, because that's not, unless I fucking go to modeling school for 5 years, I'm never going to be able to match that. And there just weren't roles for a trans femme actor like me, And so that was part of what inspired my writing of The Prince. I was like, I want to write a role where I get to be an action star. I want to run around. I think I have like 3 or 4 sword fights in The Prince, and I was knackered by the end every night. So I was like, God, why did I write so many? I wanted to be a character who gets to, jump in and fight and do stuff. And that very much carried over into House of the Dragon, because, as I say, my agent at the time sent The Prince to the casting people when they were looking at me and shortlisting the role. It was like, look, she can do this. This is the kind of energy that you want. Is somebody who can kick ass, because for Sharako, they auditioned cis women and trans women. Like, the character is written just for a cis woman. And I think they just said, we want somebody who's over 6 foot. And I'm 6'1", and my agent was like, let's get you in. And so I did, and I sort of auditioned. It was a long audition process, which I can tell you about if you want, but I did it my way, and they were like, God, we love it. So that was that. That was just sort of the bridge between the two, is what if a trans woman could be an action star? And I said this to Sarah Hess, the exec producer at the Rap Party. I said, thanks so much for letting me do this, because this is kind of a groundbreaking role. The idea that a trans woman can play an action star hasn't yet occurred to anyone outside this Rap Party, and when it does, it's going to blow their minds. So I'm quietly excited about Sharako from like a trans representation point of view, even though the character's not like explicitly trans. But yeah, it's an exciting moment for me, and I hope for the industry generally.
Nice. And Sharako is not just an action star, but also I think a comedic character. Like Sharako thrives off messing with people, and you establish this great dynamic with Jefferson Hall as Thailand, with him as a straight man, and Sharako just relentlessly making him
I could watch a whole
uncomfortable.
season of it.
Yeah. So how did you find that chemistry with Jefferson?
Well, the humor was definitely on the page for the start for Sharako. I loved working with Jefferson. In real life, Jefferson is not like Thailand at all. Jefferson's like quite a serious and quite a thoughtful guy. And he's not at all this kind of like weedy, twitchy, nervous energy at all. So seeing him switch that on, he's so funny. The little details, the little exercises he does to get himself into the zone. He's so charming, and it was so nice just working with him, just seeing him do it. And then we established this fun dynamic where Sharako is just fucking with this guy relentlessly and enjoying seeing him squirm. And then I think part of Sharako's arc in the episode is she starts off hating Thailand. And this was a decision that I made to give her this arc. She starts off hating him, and then is quickly quite kind of charmed by him, actually. So I mean, it's just Jefferson's just really, really great. He just brings this fantastic comedy to it, and that makes me want to like keep pushing him, because his little like squirms and his little like oh gosh, his little Hugh Grantisms are just so adorable that it makes me want to like keep fucking with him. I think I said this in an interview recently. We did one take where I really dialed up the seduction, and as I was saying, like, I want you to fuck my wives, I leant across to him and I was just unbuttoning his tunic. And then I realized that, like, only the top 3 unbuttoned, and then the rest had just, like, sewn on. And he was just like, it's actually a zip around the back. And I was just like, oh, sorry, that's a cut. But yeah, he's just delightful. He's really, really lovely to work with. I hope I get to work with him again.
It's kind of lovely because we get hints of this backstory when Sharako says that the sea snake will rue the day, and it's implying that that Sharako was involved in the prior conflicts and wars on the Stepstones against the Westerosi. So when Thailand turns up, like, he's from enemy territory, and yet he's asking for an alliance. And so it's kind of beautiful that Sharako and Thailand, who you would assume to be enemies given the geopolitics, overcome that and find some actual connection and attraction even. It's almost a bit of love amidst the war, almost.
Yeah, a little. Well, love, maybe a different L word, different 4-letter L word. I mean, I wanted to give her an arc over the episode. That was the challenge I wanted to set myself, because that's how you really start kind of flexing your muscles as an actor and developing, right? It would have been very easy if you just look at the dialogue on the page. It would have been really easy to come in that first scene and play Sharako the same way then as the banquet scene. Just be like, what kind of man are you? Like a poet, a philosopher? Like, it would have been really easy to do that. And just to have her be this static character who exists as a foil for Thailand, right? And I decided, no, I don't want to do that. I want to challenge myself. I want to show some more range. And I want to plan a character arc, because that's the only way you get better as a character, as an actor, right? And so I decided, and I said to Geeta and Sarah, I was like, Sharako maybe has fought or has seen the previous wars for the Stepstones. She maybe knows people who were there, maybe lost people in it. And this idea that this man from Westeros could walk in here and be welcome, and they expect her to fucking shake this guy's hand and be nice to him. We talked a little bit behind the scenes, me and Sarah, about I think I used the phrase Obama doctrine at some point. We got to the quite high and mighty about the geopolitics and the foreign policy of it. So I was like, these people in Westeros, it's Obama doctrine, isn't it? There's 2 types of men from Westeros. There's the smiley nice ones like Thailand, and then the other face, the second face of foreign policy, is the fucking fire-breathing drone strikes with teeth, right? Because they say they come in, nicely trade, and then the other face is like, they'll fucking burn you alive and eat you, right?
A literal dragon.
Yeah. And so that's that line in the first scene was like, what kind of man are you? It's her trying to figure out, all right, are you type 1 or type 2? Are you the nicely one, or are you the one who's here to fucking kill us? And wound all my men? And I was imagining in my head, like, what what are the people she's just walked past to get into this scene? If she's just come off the boat, how many of her men are missing limbs or have burns from that war? And what are they expecting her to do when she meets this guy? And so in that first scene, she's really having to hold herself back, because I think what she really wants is to either kill this guy or like spit in his face or just say, fuck off, I don't want to be here. And it's not until he shows a little bit of fire that she's like, oh, okay, like maybe you're type 2. You want to take me on, big man? And then her arc over the course of the episode is realizing, oh, he's neither of these. He's a human being, really. He's not just a sort of offshoot of the Westerosi state. He's actually an individual, and actually, maybe I want to fuck this guy. I think he arouses her curiosity, among other feelings. So yeah, that was the arc I decided to give her over the course of the episode.
Yeah, you get the sense that both Thailand and Sharako find something unexpected in each other. Like they find themselves unable to pigeonhole the other and are forced to recognize the individuality in each other. It's quite lovely.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about Sharako's backstory? I mean, I'd be fascinated to know if Sharako has, faced Corlys or Daemon or the dragon Caraxes. Did Sharako ever hang out with Kragas Crabfeeder from season 1? I can't help but want to know.
My lips are sealed on that, I'm afraid, because I don't want to box Ryan and Sarah in as they're writing season 3. I have answers to all of those questions in my head because I sort of developed my own answers. Actually, maybe this is a good chance to talk about like some of the behind the scenes of acting. So at least when I go into a scene, I ask myself all these kinds of similar questions, like where's the character come from? What have they been doing? What do they want? What was their childhood like? So, I mean, I have whole, notes towards Sharako's childhood, and we did a lot of rehearsals and improvisation, me, Sarah, Geeta, and Danielle, working out the details of Sharako's life. But that stuff, that all stays in the actor's head, and it informs the performance. And then later on, if canon changes, that stuff is all kind of like neither canon nor non-canon, really. It informs my performance, but you don't see it. It's, as it were, part of the unconscious of the show. If the show was a mind, it's sort of subconscious, right? And so I can't tell you all of that stuff because that's just in my head. And I want Sarah and Ryan to have the options to write whatever they want. But that line that she has where she says, the sea snake will rue the day we meet again, she could be talking about the sea snake Corlys, or she could be talking about the sea snake Corlys' ship. But it implies that she's met, or at least that we, whether that's Sharako and Sharako's men, have at some point met either the man or the ship. And so that line was very important to me because Sharako is a very funny character, but there's also this seriousness to her. Like she's gonna fight to the death, and nobody does that for a laugh, right? And she's not the Joker. She's not insane. She is quite clever, and so in order to have that kind of tactical mind to be an admiral, you do have to have a sort of a bit of sharpness about you, and a bit of seriousness. And so that line was important to me in terms of like, okay, that has to come from a very serious place. Like this is where we're not joking around anymore. Like we're gonna make him pay for what he's done. So yeah, that was a really, and when Thailand has his line to friendship, I think actually
that was so funny.
Yeah, so in the script, Sharako says it back. Sharako says to friendship back, but I sort of threw the line away and just sort of scoffed and said it under my breath, as if this is a sort of an idea that she has contempt for. Like this isn't about friendship. We're gonna kill these bastards. And they actually just kept when they edited it, they just kept her facial expression, which I think is great. I think the character sells that moment of like, yeah, sure, man, just with a look rather than needing the line. So.
Yeah. I think the friendship thing, it's a great contrast. His sort of the glib innocence of the friendship line versus the seriousness of Sharako, and yeah, like you do get the sense that Sharako is acting wacky, but Sharako is not crazy. Sharako is using that behavior as a tool to make people uncomfortable and to probe and to test. And she really seems quite sharp, as you say, about how she's behaving. And I love how that fits the themes of the series because, characters like Rhaenyra and Alicent are constantly either conforming to social expectations or they are defying them in the case of Rhaenyra, and finding all of the ways to weaponize or be vulnerable because of that. But
I sort of approached it as if there were two Sharakos, really. There's the real one, which we only see little glimpses of in this episode, and then there's the Sharako that she pretends to be to throw people off, which is this sort of like slightly wacky, like cannibal, or maybe she's just joking about the cannibalism, maybe she's not. There's this sort of like Sharako Lohar, the sort of legendary cannibal pirate queen, is the theatrical, version of herself that she puts out there. I modeled a lot of her on Blackbeard, actually, who the real life Edward Teach, who did a similar thing. There was the real guy about whom we don't know much, but there was also he played a sort of caricature of himself. He covered himself in pistols and had lit fuses under his hat and had smoke coming out of below deck in order to scare people, in order to throw people off, really. So yeah, I sort of was quite inspired by real life pirates.
Nice. Yeah, well, I mean, the book that House of the Dragon is based off is very much interested in the difference between reality and historical perception and political perception, and the idea of Sharako using this sort of false image and this larger than life personality as a way to terrorize or manipulate people is that's all part of the politics of the show. That's awesome.
I mean, that's also something that that's like quite in keeping with what the Triarchy do, because the crab feeder had his scary mask and he like staked people out for the crabs and stuff, and that's all what you might call psychological warfare, right? So Sharako, I think, employs psychological warfare in a different way. She doesn't, we haven't seen her stake anyone out and feed them to the crabs. Maybe she does. She doesn't wear a mask, but, I guess she wears a kind of metaphorical mask.
Or a mud mask.
A mask of mud, yeah. We have some extremely silly questions.
Sure.
Enough with the thematic stuff. I'd like to know about the monkey and the goat, because your episode starts with a CGI monkey. I'm assuming it was a CGI monkey.
Oh, no.
But I've also read...
No.
Real monkey?
You're saying it's CGI. I thought it was a real monkey.
It's a real monkey.
She's real?
She's a real monkey.
No.
Yes, she is, yeah.
What's her name?
I don't know. They told me her name. I think it starts with C, but I honestly can't remember. I only met her very briefly. But I remember we all had to hold still and be like, okay, we're doing the monkey shot, but yeah, no, she's real monkey.
Are you shitting me? She's a real monkey.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're so shocked by this.
Oh, I thought there was like rules. Oh, all right,
No,
that's delightful.
the way they do
You've
it
made
is,
my day, Abigail.
The way they do it is, I think there's like a line of it's almost like fishing line or string on the floor, and the monkey's trying to follow it, and then they CGI CGI that line out.
What, is there like a little banana on a string that they're using to lead the monkey along?
I think she gets a little treat at the end, but she's just a real trained monkey.
Oh
like all actors, they get a little treat at the end.
At the end of the take,
my
someone gives you a
God.
little fruit pastel. Yeah, I'd love that.
How was the craft services table on set?
Really
Was it
good, actually. I mean,
nice.
craft services make such a difference to the morale of the crew. And I will say that the food that, I mean, HBO took fantastic care of us start to finish. Like the little details like travel, accommodation, food, it makes so much difference to the morale. And I will say that like the food that HBO gave us is real good. I can't remember the name of the catering company off the top of my head, but like props to them. They did fantastic.
I was curious about the feast scene food as well. There's a wonderful shot of an octopus on a platter.
Yep.
And was any of that real food that you
all
could
real.
actually eat?
It's all real.
Really?
Oh my god!
The octopus is real. Yeah, the fish is real. It's
Did you have any?
No, because the thing about food on set is it's a fucking continuity nightmare. So if you take a bite of the octopus, then you've got to do that like 500 times, because that banquet scene took us like 3 days to film, and we get like so much coverage and like different angles on it, that if they've only got a certain number of octopuses, if they've only got like 3 in the back, you can't be taking a bite out of it every single scene, because they can't replace it every single time, right? And so you'll notice that I do eat an olive in the scene, and I spit the pit out. But I must have eaten like 15 of those things, because you've got to eat it in the wide and the close-up and in your coverage and in his coverage, and because it affects the way that you sound as you deliver the line, you've got to do it when the camera's not even on you. So I was eating piles of the things. So yeah, eating food on set is a nightmare. But all the food was real. That's why you'll also
so
notice
there's just 15 olive pits under the table.
No wonder it's
someone has to
stank.
come with a like a little bit of kitchen paper and pick it up every time. Yeah, you'll notice that there are people eating in the scene, but you take tiny little bites because it's easier for continuity and also to spare your stomach. Because if you take if you eat a burger in one shot, you're gonna be eating like 15 burgers that day.
I heard that Tom Bennett ate about 40 capons in the dinner scene.
He said 30 quails.
30 quails, yeah. So you're not alone.
Yeah. The spitting the olive
I hope
pit
that
out
the monkey
was
got the leftovers.
Oh yeah, spitting the olive pit out was Gita's idea. She was just like, "Can you spit that out on the table?" I was like, "Yeah, sure."
That felt very Sharako, yeah. So the mud wrestling scene appeared to be filmed in some kind of tropical paradise. Where was that actually filmed?
That was Surrey. I was amazed when I got out there.
Really?
That was all. It was all filmed on location in England. I think it was Surrey. Yeah, either Surrey or Kent. So we got out there. They dug the mud pit. The palm trees are real, but they bring them in and like put them in the ground. So they're like real trees that they ship in, and then they just sort of stick them in a hole in the ground and like pat them down so they stay up. The vegetation, the tents, the fires, the animals are all real. I'm not sure if you even saw it in that scene, but there's a golden eagle in the back. Yeah, there was a guy. I met the golden eagle. He was gorgeous. There's an eagle handler sort of way back in the deep focus, deep left. Horses, the goat. They told me the goat was quite famous, actually. They said he's a very famous goat. He's just in an advert for
Really?
McVitie's Biscuits. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm not sure if you even see the goat at any point. But like yeah, they really go all out on it. But yeah, we filmed that in Surrey. Pretty cold that day, but we warmed up as we went on.
So how many hours of mud wrestling was that for the scene?
We did all that scene in one day. I think I was up at 4 a.m. to get into wig and makeup because my makeup takes a while. You know, they put the tan on and the freckles and the wig and everything, and on my hands too. And I think we were going right up to the legal limit of how long we were allowed to film, which meant that in the last half hour it was great because we had this great energy that we're like, okay, just like again, and we did it again, different angles, said, okay, rewind, do it this bit. We had to know that fight back to front. So like, okay, can we go to move three? Okay, bam, bam, bam. And so we were out there for as long as we were able to, until eventually we ran out of light and had to call it. And we got everything we needed, and it was a long day, but it was one of the most fun days I've ever had on set, actually.
Nice. So what was the story? What was the arc throughout that wrestling scene? Because you see Sharako sort of handing Tyland's ass to him, but then Tyland slaps back with that backhanded hit, and it seems like Sharako respects him having been defeated. Is that what's happening?
Yeah. So Tyland's arc throughout this episode is he's got to find his inner lion a little bit. Unlike his brother, he's a little bit more meek. And so Sharako's function in the story, actors talk about like serving the text, right? Sharako's function in the story is to help him with that. And so this is a fight that he's getting his ass kicked. And then he reaches deep inside himself and he finds the courage to stand up for himself a little bit and fight back. We've seen him sort of get clowned on a lot throughout this series. And Sharako pushes him until he fights back. And he finds that he can do it, actually. And probably Sharako could keep fighting and kill him quite easily. And like with an order, with a command, she could kill this guy. And there is that moment at the end of the fight where it's like, oh God, has he just gone too far? Is she gonna like order him to be executed now, like for slapping her? But anyway, we get to this moment at the end of the fight, where he backhands her across the face. And this was my suggestion, actually, as we were developing the fight with the stunt team. And I pushed for it. I said, I think it's this moment where Tyland reaches deep inside himself and he crosses a little bit of a moral line too, because he treats Sharako with a certain amount of respect and deference because she's a woman and he's expecting a sort of meek, sort of courtly lady. And that's not what he gets. And I think eventually he sort of finds some anger and some viciousness in himself, and he backhands Sharako across the face, and we get this very like girly noise from Sharako. This as she's like backhanded. And Tyland's quite shocked at himself. And I pushed to have that moment in. So it's like, it also kind of tells us it just keeps the audience, it keeps that like, what the fuck is the gender going on in this scene, kind of on the boil, really. And it also pushes Tyland to this place of like, oh, I'm a little bit morally compromised and vicious. So yeah, that was his arc throughout the fight, actually. And then Sharako is like, okay, this guy does have a little bit of fire to him. He's not the kind of weak guy I thought he was. But maybe there's more to him.
There's a line where Sharako asks if Tyland is a philosopher.
Yeah.
Was that written for Philosophy Tube? Was that written for you?
No, that is a complete coincidence. And actually, we couldn't change it because of the writer's strike. But the script had to be formed exactly as written. We couldn't change a word of it. And so I said to them, I was just like, people are gonna ask about this. And they were like, why? What do you mean? And I was like, I have this YouTube shit. You know what? Don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it. I'm not even going to explain it. So yeah, no, that is a complete coincidence, but very funny.
So if the lines couldn't be changed due to the strikes, what about like improvisation? Like what about altering the lines as you're saying them? How much flexibility was there?
None. I had to say them exactly as written. We were allowed to improvise noises. So there was a bit in the first scene, we did a couple of takes where, so we did a few different versions of that first scene where they meet. One is where Sharako, the one that you see is Sharako is icy all the way through up to the end. And then one, she changes halfway through and we see the kind of joking side of her. So there was a bit where I improvised barking at him like a dog and then everyone laughs at him. We did a couple of takes where I improv that and I was allowed to improvise the dog sound. But in the end that got cut. There was also a bit in the fight where I was like making kissy faces at him. I was like to tease him when he's like caught between my thighs. And I think that ended up getting cut just for pacing really, because it just dropped the pacing of the fight partway through. So I think that was a good cut. So yeah, we were allowed to improvise noises, but not lines. Lines had to be DLP, as we say, dead letter perfect.
God. And is that not usually how it's done?
Honestly, it depends on the director. I usually like to give the director maybe like an extra 10-15%. Like I might improvise something if I feel it in the moment. And I always check with the director beforehand. I say to them, like, how do you feel about this? Some directors say, no, it needs to be exactly as it is. I remember when I did the BBC everything is DLP. Has to be. If you get even a single word wrong, someone will come up to you with the script afterwards and be like, actually, it's this. And you go, okay, right. Or at least it was when we did Ladhood. Whereas Django, I'd say about 25 to 30% of the dialogue in Django was made up on the spot. Including some of the, so I improvised some stuff in that scene. There's a scene in episode 1 where Django and Jess meet and Jess patches up Django's injured hand. There's an exchange there about Django being a little bit romantic. That was just something Matthias and I improvised. I think Matthias was trying to loosen me up because that was my first day on set and I was terrified.
Well, now that you've been on Game of Thrones, Star Wars, and Baldur's Gate, I imagine you'll be going into the next project with more confidence and more experience.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little bit nervy on House of the Dragon. There was one bit in the banquet scene. Because again, we tried it a few different ways. Part of that is to give Gita options. Part of it is to give HBO options because exec producers have final say and stuff. And so we tried that final scene a few different ways. There was one where Sharako just says very casually, like, "I want you to fuck my wife." Like, come on, of course, right?
Obviously.
And then there was the version that I wanted to do where like she's seducing him and she's saying like, basically what she's saying is, I want you to fuck my wife with me. And so I was a little bit nervy about, how much can I push it here? There was one point where we'd gotten my coverage and Gita said, okay, we're ready to move on. And I said, actually, Gita, would you mind if we just did one more? I just want to try this seduction angle a little bit. And she was like, okay, let's do it. And as they were setting up to do this take, I had a bit of nerves. So I was like, oh, okay, Abigail, like the biggest TV show in the world just stopped and said, okay, over to you. And it's like lights, camera, action, biggest show in the world. Like for however many, like fucking $20 million an episode. It's now the Abigail show. Like, over to you. Do your thing. And we did it, and that was the take they used. Was this smoldering seduction. So yeah, I was a little bit nervous. Jefferson was really good at putting me at ease. Actually, I remember it was like end of day 1 or 2 at the end of the day. He lent in and he was like, cracking work there, really good stuff. And I was just like, oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Everyone was really supportive.
Awesome. Who else were you working with in developing the character? Like was Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess involved?
Yeah, I bumped into Ryan every now and again. It was mainly Sarah as the writer of the episode, and Geeta and Danielle, the dialogue coach, because we did a lot of back and forth on what we wanted Sharako's accent to be. We cycled through a few different options actually, and eventually we settled on the one that she has, which is a little bit posher than mine. Listeners, you might be able to tell I'm from the north of England, so I'm not quite as cut glass as Sharako is. We decided that Sharako was somebody who had learned very precisely the language of Westeros. She speaks it as fluently as a native, and she has learned to do this, which just adds to the incongruity of the character. Like, she's this very vicious, savage character, but she speaks with this very refined, like Keira Knightley in Pirates of the Caribbean, after dinner. She has, whereas I'd say after dinner, right? She has this very refined accent, which is not at all what you'd expect from someone this rough, and it's because she's learned to do it.
She's a loose cannon, but she talks proper.
It was really nice actually to have all the time to rehearse. You don't normally get a lot of time to rehearse on a show, on a TV show, not like you do in theatre. But Geeta and Sarah called me in a fair bit, actually. We were rehearsing for weeks, like improvising about Sharako's childhood and writing a backstory, did a couple of improvs with Jefferson, with all sorts of people. Like, it was really, really nice to have that time and space to focus on it. And Geeta was really, really keen to do that too, which I, was lovely. I loved working with her.
Awesome. We have another extremely silly question,
Sure.
which is... who would be Sharako Lohar's favorite real-life philosopher? Like, do you think Sharako would be into Hegel, or like what's her deal?
I don't think Sharako thinks much of philosophy. I think if you, I wouldn't want to recommend a philosopher to her, because I think she probably has quite a disdain for people who don't jump in and take action. I think that's part of what's going on in that first scene. She uses philosopher as an insult. Literally, she's like, "Who's this guy? He's not a warrior." Like, I think if she was going to read a book, she'd read a book about, naval tactics rather than philosophy.
Lao Tzu.
maybe. Sun Tzu, maybe. Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu,
Art of War.
Yeah. So how will this experience as an actor, do you think it'll affect and inform Philosophy Tube? How are you going to take the lessons from these new experiences into YouTube?
Yeah, well, I guess that's a great question. I mean, my acting's always sort of informed Philosophy Tube, really. Philosophy Tube is a different kind of acting. When I play characters on the show, when I'm in my presenter mode, it's a different sort of acting, because they're usually very sort of one-dimensional. Because when I play characters on Philosophy Tube, like the Arsonist or like Kelly Slaughter, they are there to be a very obvious embodiment of a particular worldview. They're not necessarily meant to be as 3D and as nuanced as a real human being. And so I go through very different processes when I develop characters for Philosophy Tube. The writing definitely leads on Philosophy Tube, whereas when I create a character for theatre or film or TV, I do a lot of what you call like traditional acting techniques. I use a lot of Michael Chekhov technique in my practice, which is a sort of psychophysical way of creating characters. I do a lot of animal studies when I create characters for film, TV, and theatre. And I basically just kind of really go into the weeds a little bit more than I would on a Philosophy Tube. I remember I also do a thing which doesn't really have a name, but it's an exercise I do where I try to physically recreate some of the circumstances of the character's key memories. So, for example, Jess on Django, I created this memory for her where she had been, somebody had tried to drown her in a sort of animal feed trough as a child. And so I sort of did that to myself in the bath. I grabbed the back of my head and dunked myself in the bath and just held it there. Not in a way that put me in danger, obviously, but just to sort of physically recreate some of those sensations. And I did similar things I won't tell you about for Sharako too. So I really sort of go in deep on it for film, TV, and theatre in a way that I don't necessarily for Philosophy Tube. But I think one of the questions I have for myself is like, how am I going to handle the fact that there are now people who recognize me from House of the Dragon, from acting, more than from Philosophy Tube. In fact, just the other day, I think the episode came out like less than a week ago at time of recording, and on today's Thursday, on Tuesday I got recognized from House of the Dragon for the first time. A guy in my gym was just like, I saw you on TV, you're in that House of the Dragon. I was like, I was, yeah. I said, you're the first person to recognize me from that. I wish I could give you some kind of prize, you know. It was the first time I've ever been recognized from that, rather than not the first time I've been recognized from acting, but from this show specifically. So yeah, I guess I do now have a lot of comments under my YouTube channel. People are like, I just found you from House of the Dragon, and I'm like, oh hey, welcome. This is the other thing that I do. There's a new episode of Philosophy Tube coming out tomorrow that makes a joke about House of the Dragon. And actually, back when I was auditioning, I made a little sneaky joke about House of the Dragon.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, I did an episode on Stoicism, I think last year. I hadn't gotten the part yet. I was waiting to hear back. And I made a joke about, I think it was Zeno of Citium was the philosopher I was talking about. And I said, oh, he sounds like a minor character from House of the Dragon. I just dropped that in there. But I didn't know I had the part at that stage. I was still waiting to hear back.
Are you a fan of Game of Thrones and of A Song of Ice and Fire before you were cast in Hot D?
I wouldn't say I was a fan. I mean, when I knew the audition was coming up, I read the bits of Fire and Blood that Sharako is mentioned in. I mean, once I knew it was Sharako, because initially I didn't know that was the part, because they didn't tell me until later on. But once I found out, I read Fire and Blood, and I read what happens to Sharako. As for Game of Thrones, no, I hadn't seen it. My brother was a big fan of it. I had absorbed some stuff through cultural osmosis. And when I was auditioning before the first round, I watched 3 episodes of season 1 and then I cut myself off because I was like, I don't want to give them something they've already seen. I want to give them a fresh take on the character, because I said, I bet that every other actor's going to go in there and try and act like they're already in House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. That a lot of the characters have this very sort of serious, almost Shakespearean style to them. And I said, I don't want to give them that. I want to serve the text. That is my job, is to serve the text they put in front of me. And I wanted to give them a fresh take, and that was lucky, because when I walked into the second round and Ryan was there and he actually told me what the character was, it was when I learned for the first time was what the actual role was, because they didn't tell me in the first round. And Ryan said, we want this character to be something totally different. She brings something new to the show. And I was like, oh, perfect, great. Lucky me then.
Yeah, well, that's the charm of Sharako, isn't it? Is that she's from another world, she's from another continent, and she doesn't have the experience that most of the characters in the show have, which is being stuck on various islands complaining about the war and all of their family members being murdered. And so I think the purpose of Sharako is to actually be the one person on the show who's actually having an enormous amount of fun, and has a different perspective and a different energy, which kind of shakes up the tone of the show.
Yeah, at least that's her job in this episode. I mean, if she comes back, I'll be interested to see how they develop her, or if they just let her continue playing that role. But
so we're hoping that there'll be a confirmation of Sharako coming back for season 3 at some future point.
I don't know. I mean, they're still writing season 3 at the moment. And again, to give you a glimpse behind the curtain, things would be written, developed, pre-production would start. All of that would happen before actors get sent contracts for the next season. Yeah. And they would also do that in order of the leads. So Matt and Emma, they'll get their contracts first, and then they'll work their way down the list, basically. I never celebrate until I've signed the contract. Because it's happened to me a couple times before, actually, that I've thought I've gotten a role and then it's been taken away. It very nearly happened with Django. They offered me the role. 2 weeks later, they took it back because I wasn't available for a key thing. And then I was in tears. I was gutted. I'd already told all my family and friends that I'd gotten this big part. And then a week after that, they gave it back to me. Because they're like, oh, we moved the thing that you couldn't make and now you got it. And the same very nearly happened with Star Wars too. Actually, they gave it to me and then they said, actually, no, you can't have it. Or rather, they said, you have to not do something else in order to do this. And I said, at the end, I said, sorry, I'm going to have to let it go. I have to do that other thing. It's not optional. And then they said, all right, fine, we'll change it. We'll work around it because we want you. So I never celebrate until I've signed the contract.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, even when you film stuff, you can't quite be sure if it's going to come out as expected
Exactly.
until it actually comes out.
Exactly,
Right?
that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with Django, we filmed 8 episodes of that with Jess, and then she only appears in 6. So you never know. You never know. Even once you filmed it, I remember when I did the ADR for House of the Dragon, I was like preparing myself. I was like, right, okay, Abigail, it's probably going to be a lot smaller than what you remember, and that's okay. Like, don't get upset by it. And then like 99% of what we shot was in the episode. I was like, oh, great. Yay.
Awesome. What was the mood like with the actors' strikes and the writers' strikes affecting the production? How were people handling that?
We were all just kind of grateful to be there because the writer's strike was SAG and the actor's strike was SAG, but House of the Dragon is done under, or at least season 2 was shot under equity contracts. Which is a different union. It's the UK union. So we kept working. We were like the only show who were allowed to keep going. And it was actually kind of spooky because we shot a lot of it at WB Studios in Leavesden, and we were the only ones there. Everything else was shut down. We had the whole place to ourselves. And it's a huge...
Ghost town.
Yeah, it's like a city in there. And everything was empty. Like I think Venom 3 was shooting just around the corner from us. They were shut down. There was something else that was meant to be filming at the time that got shut down too. So yeah, the whole place was just dead. It was actually kind of creepy, walking across these big airport hangars and just nobody there. But yeah, we were just grateful to be there. Really, the energy was a little strange because Sarah wasn't allowed to write anything or change anything. She was allowed to be there in her role as executive producer, but she wasn't allowed to write, and so I was able to ask questions like, what do you think about this aspect of the backstory? But she wasn't supposed to be giving me feedback on dialogue, and she also couldn't change the dialogue. So there were a couple of times where she had to be like, can't answer that question. As a writer, I'm on strike. So it was a kind of a weird time to be filming, but to be honest, we were just grateful that we were allowed to be there and grateful to be the only ones in the industry working at the time, really. In fact, I mentioned earlier on, I auditioned for that thing that India got instead of me. And I remember being grateful because I was like, God, if I'd gotten that, I wouldn't have been free to shoot this. And that production got shut down by the strikes. So I'd have been sitting around doing nothing. It was like, if India hadn't beaten me at that audition, I wouldn't be here right now. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
a crazy time for the whole
You think you
industry.
missed something, and then it's like, no, something better. One door closes, another opens.
It worked out. I mean, with philosophy mentioned in the script, it must have been destiny, right?
I couldn't believe that. I was like, oh man, people are going to give me shit for this. They're going to think I made that up. And I was like, no, that is what they wrote.
What's your experience with the fandom in the show?
It's been like overwhelmingly really, really positive, actually. It's been lovely, the degree to which House of the Dragon fans, first of all, accepted the change from the books, and second of all, welcomed the things that are very much the same for the books. The fact that in the book, Sharako is a man, and in this, is a woman, people have just like totally rolled with that. And to see the way people have gone, oh yeah, like I guess that is one of the themes of season 2. Like it's just been really lovely. I've gotten a lot of encouraging messages of support from people being like, welcome to the show. Like it's been so lovely. So yeah, it's actually genuinely been wonderful, the fan interactions I've had so far.
That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah. Well, it's just like as people on YouTube, like I'm sure we've all experienced shitty comments and negativity, so it's awesome to hear that it's been positive from the fandom.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of that here and there, but I've got years of practice doing this as a YouTuber. I deliberately don't seek out that kind of thing. So yeah, the stuff I've seen has been overwhelmingly positive. I have a rule on the Philosophy Tube subreddit, which is no backseat acting. Because if I want feedback on an acting performance, I can get that from Gita and from my colleagues. So I usually say to people, hey, like if you got comments or feedback on my acting, there's other subreddits you can go to for that, and I'm not going to read them. But for the most part, you can kind of go mad as an actor if you try and please everyone on social media all the time. I mean, there's a reason that like Ryan and Sarah and the exec producers aren't on social media at all, because at the end of the day, you got to have the sort of feedback that's helpful and constructive from people who know the industry, right? But yeah, as I say, it's been overwhelmingly wonderful.
Yeah. And I think that, especially for Sharako Lohar, it would make no sense for people to get upset about changes to the book character when
Yeah.
Sharako in the books is a very minor character who doesn't have a very clearly defined personality. And what we're given in Hot D is so much more and serves the themes so much more. Like, the Sharako of the books, Sharako is not anyone's favorite character in the books. But the Sharako on the screen that you've played, I'm certain, is many people's favorite character.
That's what people have said. It's also been really lovely. There's people. It's so nice when people pick up on the little choices that I made as an actor. I chose to play it that Sharako was becoming attracted to Thailand, and that's never stated explicitly. She doesn't say I quite fancy you, but people picked up on that, and there's there's Tylarico shippers on Tumblr and TikTok now. There's people making Sharako fan cams. There's people who are like, I found her so funny. I think there's people writing fan fiction, although I haven't read that. I'm aware that it exists. But like, this is all less than a week after the show's come out. She's already some people's favorite character, which is wonderful. It's so nice. Really validating.
Yeah. And you talked about like whether they'll bring Sharako back for season 3. They can't not bring Sharako back.
We'll
right?
go
Like,
on strike if they don't.
I know that you don't want to celebrate yet because you haven't signed the contract, but from our perspective, like, the season ends on Sharako triumphantly sailing her fleet towards Westeros. She can't, like, what? She fell off the boat during the journey? Like, she can't not turn up.
There was a pretty big storm going on. Maybe she did.
Yeah, you never know. You really never know. I mean, also, like, I could fall down the stairs and break my legs. Like, I could, something could happen to me between now and 2025 that means I can't be in the show. Like, any number of things could happen. So I never celebrate until the contract is signed. And even then, I don't really properly celebrate until the show comes out. Because even if you sign the contract, you can get edited out. Like, you never know.
Yeah. Even when you release the YouTube video, you might still get demonetized.
Yeah,
any minute.
it's a heck of a
Does that
business.
happen on Philosophy Tube?
Uh,
Do you have issues with demonetization and
Not often,
content
because
age gating and all of that?
Not often, because I usually upload a sort of draft version first as I'm editing, and I keep it unlisted for a few days just so YouTube has time to think about it. And so usually the version that is released is a version that I'm happy with and that YouTube is happy with too. And I always know that I can get the uncensored version on Nebula too. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a heck of an unpredictable industry. Like, I graduated from drama school at probably the worst time to do it, and the industry has just gone through shock after shock with, like, I mean, interest rates going up absolutely knackered the industry in a huge way, and like the strikes and COVID still are having a massive impact. I mean, I'll level with you, like, in the UK 76% of entertainment industry freelancers are out of work. In the US it's 75. So when I said earlier on that we were grateful to be working through a writer's strike, like, we're grateful to be working at all. And it's pretty, in terms of work, it's pretty thin on the ground out here. So yeah, it's a very unpredictable industry, acting, but it's not a business that you get into if you want money or a kind of stable career.
I suppose it's a lot like YouTube in that respect.
It is, yeah. You do it because you love it. So I have 2 full-time jobs, both of which are like, don't get into this for the money. It's been really funny, actually. Like, I mean, candidly, like, I've seen 1 or 2 people being like, oh, you did Star Wars and House of Dragon in the same year. Like, how's that Disney?
Must be rolling.
How's
in
that
it.
HBO money? I'll tell you this, right? My landlord is doing really well off this. Because the money that they paid me, like, I'm not complaining, like, they're very kind, and as far as acting goes, it's always great to be employed, but no, the money that I got paid from, I shot Star Wars and House of the Dragon in the same year, and the money that I got paid for both combined was less than I paid in rent that year. I still have not had a year yet where I've been able to live off acting, because that's just what it's like. I mean, I read this interview a while ago with Sydney Sweeney where she said that she can't stop working for more than probably about like 6 months. because it just doesn't acting doesn't pay. I mean, that's a lot longer than most people could afford to stop working. So I'm not complaining. I'm aware that we're very privileged, but yeah, it's been funny seeing people make comments like that and just gone, I wish.
Yeah, they really have no idea. Even with like small time YouTubers like ourselves,
Acting
have no idea.
Acting is a brutal industry. And as excited as I was to go through the auditions for this, there were like 3 rounds of auditions, and I just got to dust my hands every time I leave an audition. I remember the second round where I found out what it was, and I realized what a big thing I was up for. Whenever I audition, I don't like that to be the only thing I do that day. So after the audition was done, I took myself out for lunch at my favorite Chinese place, which was coincidentally just around the corner. And I said, right, Abigail, that's the closest I'm going to get. That's the last I'm ever going to hear about this. But I was like, you know what? I'm pleased with what I did. Gave it there and gave it my best shot. So I have this thing I say to myself, like, I'm going to be the nicest, most professional person they don't give the job to. And I came out of the second round being pleased, and then found out there was a third round that I was through to that. So, yeah, it's a brutal industry.
I think that acting might be the only job that's more of a emotional and financial roller coaster than YouTube is.
Yeah, I mean, being a professional actor is an expensive habit.
Yeah.
But it's I do it because I love it. There's nothing like it, really. That feeling of just pure, total creativity. I mean, whatever you want to call it, whether you call that like a creative flow state, or whether you call that like the acting force, or Dionysus, or whatever it is, that sort of transcendent moment where you just are in it and you just create something. And I love those moments as an actor, when I move or when I speak or when I deliver a line in a way that I, Abigail, never would, but I've just discovered an entirely new way that I can be by inhabiting that character. There's nothing like it. It's the best thing in the world.
Yeah. I don't know anything about acting. I'm a fan of the idea of the flow state, though, of being like totally immersed and engaged in a task. And the idea of acting as a way that the flow and the emotion, it goes all the way down to your identity, right? It's all the way down to your emotion. It's all the way down to your cognitive processes. That does sound like the deepest possible form of flow state, doesn't it? That sounds amazing.
It's beautiful. It's funny, actually, that people who know me, particularly people who know me very well and who love me, I had an old partner of mine watched Django once and was just like, I can't watch it for more than about 5 minutes because it seems really uncanny, because it's you, but it's not you. Because it looks like you, but you move and you speak and your energy is just different. It's like you've been replaced by a doppelganger. And she said, I can't watch it. It's creepy. I can't do it. And I was like, fair enough. I guess that's quite a nice compliment, I suppose.
Can you watch yourself acting? Like, do you feel comfortable watching your old episodes or your old YouTube videos? Like,
old YouTube videos, not so much, because
no one can watch their old YouTube videos.
Some of the old YouTube videos,
yeah, when they were hosted by the other guy.
When the other guy was on it. My brother.
Your brother, yeah.
Those are a little harder to watch, but in terms of acting, I didn't used to be able to. In particular, I'll be real with you. When I first came out, it was hard. It was hard to watch Ladhood. It was hard to watch some bits of Django. I remember actually there was one moment on Django where I accidentally walked past the monitors as they were playing one of my takes back, and I was kind of stunned. And Michaela De Rossi, who was in some scenes with me, Mickey, on Django, she saw this happen to me and like realized what was going through my head. And she was like, talk to me about it. What are you feeling? And I was like, I just, it's okay. I was worried it was going to be really bad. I was worried I was going to not look the way I want to look. And I was like, it's actually fine. That's what the camera sees. I really look like that. And she was like, yeah, you do. Like, you're doing great. I was like, wow, okay. Huh. And from then on, it was a lot easier. So Django was a great learning curve for me as a screen actor. When I graduated drama school, I thought for a while I wasn't going to get any screen roles because my first few roles out of drama school were all theatre. And I was just like, oh, okay, I guess like screen acting's just not going to happen for me. Like, for some actors, it just never does. And then it all sort of happened at once, which is kind of when BBC, Sky, HBO, like straight away, like bam, 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 like straight into the biggest show in the world. I was like, whoa, okay. But for a while, I thought, I guess screen acting is not going to be in my future. So Django and Ladhood were real learning curves for me as I was like learning what it means to be on a set. And now I'm much more comfortable watching myself back. And indeed, it's part of my process now is going back and giving myself notes and being like, okay, how can I do better? And obviously for Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, as I've been involved in post-production, I have to. And I found it actually helps. It especially to see a film or a TV show being edited together and think, oh, that's what the editor needs in this shot. So I find it a lot easier and more helpful now, essential actually, to watch my own performance back. And now that I've seen House of the Dragon once with my friends and, celebrated, over the next few days I'll be going back and watching my performance and giving myself notes so that I can do better next time. Because that's what I want.
Being able to see the result of the work from multiple different angles and being able to see it from the editing room as well, I can only imagine helps the performance.
Yeah. Because, what I want at the end of the day is to be the best actor I can be. I want to get better.
Yeah. Do you have like a dream future project? Like if there was like an existing show or your personal project or like what's the blank check pie in the sky ambition?
Yeah. So there was.
Dave Whiskers gives you a blank check.
Yeah, when Dave Whiskers gives you your next 9-figure check, what do you want to spend it on?
So there was actually a dream role that I had. This was an exercise they encouraged us to do at drama school. Is pick a role that would sort of be your North Star. That's like the perfect blend of pleasure, business, personal interest, like developing, and also like pretty sure it's in your comfort zone, right? Like what's your like ideal role that would be the perfect balance of all those qualities that you want? And there was a role, and I did end up going up for it and didn't get it. It wasn't the one that India got. It's a different one that I'll tell you off mic. But I didn't get it, and I haven't set a new North Star since then. Oh well, I kind of have actually. There is a role that I have in mind. It's an action role. It's like a. It's not like a traditional action role. It's not like James Bond or something. It's an action role for a woman, and it's a show that is currently in development. I don't think I'm gonna even be considered for it because I expect it's the lead role in something, and I expect they will want somebody quite above my pay grade to do it. But there's something I have in mind that I'll tell you it off mic.
Well, the future is long and bright.
Hope so.
So the next project is, I hear that Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, your movie, is coming out soon.
Yeah. Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend comes out in September. It's a Nebula exclusive. So we wrapped that. This year. That's a really special experience. I really pushed myself as an actor on that. Belladonna is my character in that, and I deliberately played against type. You'll see. Character who's very unlike Sharako. So yeah, I wanted to stretch myself a little bit. It's a film about trauma from bad relationships, but also what if your ex was Count Dracula? Like, wouldn't that be kind of funny and also horrifying? What if your kind of like abusive stalker ex was a superpowered vampire? So yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. That comes out in September. And I shot that with Morgana Ignis is my co-lead, who listeners might know her if you're fans of Hell of a Boss. She's one of the leads in that, and Brandon Rogers too.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to look out for it on Nebula.
Yeah.
And we'll have to look out for the next Philosophy Tube video coming out tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow. It's already out on Nebula, actually.
Fantastic. All right, well, we'll be checking it out, and we are very much anticipating the return of Sharako to Hot D Season 3.
Fingers crossed. As I say, I never celebrate until the contract is signed.
Cool. All right, well, thank you so much for coming and speaking, Abigail. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys.
Cheers.
Till next time.